These are two ladies that I look up to tremendously. They are wise and funny, and they are very smart too. And they know a lot about what we're going to be talking about tonight. So they had this great idea of sitting down and having a conversation with me and with you guys about some questions that y'all had, specifically around anxiety. So these are questions that a few of you submitted through a link that we had a couple of days ago that sent out via social media and text messages about questions that y'all had specifically regarding anxiety and depression and fear and worry and stress, all sorts of emotions that maybe you are feeling right now during this time of social distancing. And we're going to focus specifically on the questions regarding anxiety. So, drum roll, please. Without any further ado, let's welcome Melissa and Molly. Yay! Thank you guys for coming and sharing your wisdom and your insight with us tonight, specifically around anxiety. Can y'all go ahead and just tell me, introduce yourselves, and kind of, if you want to, I didn't tell them that I was going to ask them this, but if you want to, just share like your background in dealing with anxiety, why you have some knowledge around anxiety professionally.
Oh, wow. So I am Melissa Trickey, and I am actually a counseling student, finishing up her master's. And doing an internship over in Barrow at Barrow Ministry Village. And there we get to see a lot of people that have a lot of anxiety and depression. And so I help them find ways to manage it, to better understand it, and to understand why they're having the reactions they're having. Mm-hmm. So, and that's what I do.
Thank you.
So I am a licensed professional counselor. I've been at it for a few years now. Worked for a little while at the Ministry Village and in Loganville, and then a few years ago I moved over to Eagle Ranch, and so I get to work with families over there, and anxiety, depression, family troubles. I've gotten to work with marriages, just a lot of different things. And anxiety is always a big issue, especially with our adolescents. So I'm excited to get to come and talk and just share a little bit. Personally, I know what anxiety feels like, and I just want to help our kiddos out.
Yeah,
our big kids out.
Yeah,
exactly.
I've loved being able to check in with you guys over the last couple of days and weeks, just to talk about some of the things that you may be feeling right now during this time of social distancing. We've been able to share about how you are struggling with going to online classes, and many of y'all have shared how you're a senior in high school, and some of the things that you have always done or some of the things that you were looking forward to are now getting kind of canceled and put on hold and postponed, and the future is uncertain. And so many of y'all have just said that you are so anxious and worried about what could be next. And the word anxious and anxiety, that comes up a lot in the conversations that I'm having with students. And I think it'd be helpful for students and for any families watching if we could just define what anxiety is, and maybe what it might look like for different people.
Okay. So anxiety is a natural thing. It's something that we all have. It is a natural human reaction that involves your body and your mind. It serves an important basic survival function. Anxiety is an alarm system that's within your body that is activated whenever a person perceives danger or threat. And I think during this time of unknown, we all are feeling anxiousness about what might happen or what could possibly happen, and it's just the unknown. And what was the other part of the question?
Yeah, what anxiety might look like in people.
So it looks different in every person. I mean, it can be irritability. It can be someone who can't sit still, can't rest, someone who's not getting enough sleep or can lay down and can't sleep throughout the night. In others, it could be a tearfulness. Molly, what have you seen?
Racing thoughts, and sometimes it wakes you up in the middle of the night, so you might be getting a really good night's sleep, and all of a sudden you wake up and you start thinking about all the things that you probably wouldn't even think about during the day, but at night, for some reason, it'll hit you. It doesn't just have to hit you at night. There's racing thoughts during the day, too, and maybe you're working on a school assignment, and all of a sudden you start having all of these thoughts about what could happen, and it's really frustrating. And some people actually get worked up to the point that they might have panic attacks, which is where you can't breathe and your heart's racing and you feel like the world is shutting in around you. So it can go from just kind of being irritable all the way to having panic attacks. So it's just a out of control feeling, and it's just always follows you when you're really dealing with true anxiety.
So often it is easy for us to confuse anxiety for stress. And I think that sometimes anxiety can maybe manifest itself in stressful feelings or activities that we might think of as stress. But there's a difference between anxiety and stress. Stress is like you are super worked up and busy and worried about something. And maybe that can lead to anxiety, but there's a difference between anxiety and stress. Wouldn't you say so? Yeah. Well, I know that this is going to be a helpful conversation for me. As someone, you were saying anxiety might be something that makes you wake up at night. You might be having a great night of sleep, and you might just wake up with anxious thoughts. And that has happened to me before. And I know that several of our students can relate. And several students have actually submitted questions for you guys to answer. And the first question that our students had for you guys is, how do you actually put something into God's hands? How do we have him carry our burdens and our anxieties and worries? What would you guys say to that question? How do you put something in God's hands?
So I think actually putting something in God's hands is a process. And it's a process because, first off, we like to think we know best. We know best for ourselves. And secondly, we think that our situation isn't a big enough deal to God. You know, what we're going through or what is stressing us may not be as big as what is going on in someone else's life. So we think, oh, we'll just handle it. But it's a process. I think you give it to him, and you leave it there, and then we start listening to our own emotions. And then we start that worry again, and so we take it back. Or we're talking about it with someone else, and they start telling us what they would do, and they're like, well, maybe we do know how to handle this. When in reality, we don't. And there's something special about putting it in God's hand and working with him in the waiting. There's something that you learn in the waiting that doesn't happen if he answers it immediately. And then the other thing I think we have to handle is that sometimes when we give things to him, it includes other people, and it includes their free will. So just like he won't make us do things, he won't make others do free will. So we have to take that into consideration on what we're asking him to do or what we're asking him to make happen.
I think it's important to know, like, if you feel like you've put things in God's hands, but then you took them back, it's okay. I want you to hear from my heart, like, God's not mad at you for you giving it over and taking it back, because he knows that we're human and he knows that it's going to happen again and again and again. So in one area, we might keep saying, okay, God, you can have it. And then the minute we feel threatened or we feel like, oh, maybe he doesn't have it, then we take it back again. And that's okay. God wants you to know that he will carry it when you're ready, and he will let you have it back, and you can give it back to him over and over and over again. He's not mad at you, and he's not frustrated with you for that process. He wants to walk with you in it. So keep working on it, keep at it, and know that he's just right there waiting.
Yeah, I think, when I've thought about giving something in my life over to God, it takes time and patience and practice. And I think I've shared this with you guys before, students, but sometimes giving things up to God, sometimes going to God in prayer is not as easy or as simple as we want it to be or as we think it should be. And it's also when it comes to emotions are so real. You know, we like to think that we can have control over our emotions, and we do. We can have control over our emotions, but the way that our emotions make us feel are real. And so in those moments when we are getting anxious or overwhelmed and worry and fear comes knocking at our door, it is so easy to pick back up something because it kind of gives us a sense of like, we think we can control it if we can pick it up, if we can take it back in our hands. We think that we can control it, and it's not usually always true.
Exactly.
Well, the next question that someone submitted is, how do I talk to my, this one is hard. Parents, you might want to listen in closely on this conversation. How do I talk to my parents about anxiety and depression when it feels like they don't care or understand? This is a big one.
So this was the hardest one for me when I started thinking about it, because I don't want our parents to feel shamed or like they're not listening, because it's what it felt like as I read it. And I want students to know that no matter what you're feeling from your parents, they do care about you. They do. And they do want what's best for you. So I know whoever submitted this question, I'm really, really sorry that you feel like your parent may not care about this, but I have a feeling that they do, and maybe they're not, maybe you're just not connecting yet on it. And you say maybe that they don't understand, and you might be right that they don't understand anxiety or depression. It's really hard to understand those when you've never experienced them personally. And so I believe the most important thing for you to do in this situation is to talk to your parents about how you're feeling. Now, my family will laugh because we do talk about how we're feeling quite a bit, but that's not always normal in every family. I get that. So, I'm just wondering what is going in the comments right now for my kids.
Too. I wonder what is going through parents' heads right now. Oh God, I wonder if that was my student who submitted that.
Yes, so, but here's one way that you can do it, is an easy formula is to say, I feel blank because or when blank. So here's a few examples for like right now where we are. I feel anxious because I keep hearing stories about COVID-19 and all the people who have died from it. Or I feel depressed right now because I can't even leave the house and my routine is out of whack. Or I feel scared because I heard the older people die from COVID. And will my grandparents be okay? Like, these are really scary times that we're living in. And it's important that you're talking about how you're feeling with your parents. And it's okay to tell your parents directly, I feel depressed or anxious, and I'm concerned about myself. It's okay to say that directly, and it's okay to say it more than one time. Because sometimes parents are busy and we're distracted, and we may not hear you the first time you say it. So keep saying it, keep talking about it. And ultimately, if you feel like your parents aren't listening because they may be distracted and busy during this crazy time, talk to a trusted adult, talk to one of your youth leaders, your coaches, teachers, somebody in your life who you know that you can trust and talk to, and they may be able to fill in that gap between you and your parents. So don't go in a hole by yourself. Talk to somebody about it.
Please.
I think students, it's really easy for us to think that our parents can be mind readers, because so often they are. It's like they have eyes in the back of their head, right? They catch you doing things that you aren't supposed to be doing, and you seem to always be getting in trouble when you thought you were being really sneaky, right? It's like our parents just naturally know so much about what we're doing in our lives, and they know our grades before we even know them sometimes. Just like, surely they should know how we are feeling without us having to communicate that. And I think it's so important that we remember that we need to be able to communicate. We need to be able to say our emotions and our feelings. And I think for me, something that I have found myself struggling with, especially when I was your age, students, was saying my emotions without letting my emotions override what I was saying. You know, it's kind of like when you fall and get hurt and your parents are like, oh my goodness, what happened? Are you okay? And you're like, and you like cannot get a single word out. But then once you stop crying, you're like, oh, you know what? I'm actually okay. And that didn't hurt at all. I was just afraid that I was going to be hurt. And I think that that's kind of similar with being able to express our emotions. If we are not able to express in words how we're feeling. I think that's really important, and that's key for being able to bring parents in on the conversation. Say, hey, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle, big sibling, this is how I'm feeling right now in this moment while you're talking to me, and I just don't know what to do. That's good, guys. Here's one more question I want y'all to answer this evening. This is another big one. Why are we as humans quick to become anxious? Wow, there's a lot of theology right there for us to talk about. And why is it so hard for us to trust God, especially in times of chaos, confusion, and fear?
You had this one.
Well, I do have this one, but we were going to do it together.
You go first.
So, as I said before, anxiety is it's a natural human reaction. Anytime something unknown comes up, it because in the old days, in days of survival, if you didn't react soon enough, you'd be dead. So, everyone has anxiety. I'll let you in on a little truth. Coming here and this being my first broadcast, I had way lots of anxiety.
I had a lot of anxiety too. I'm not gonna lie.
Exactly. I'm a little nervous right now. But anyway, moving on. So when I get with someone that has anxiety, I always try to help them find tips that will help them anywhere they're at. And the first one I come up with is find truth in the situation. The unknown has a lot of untruths. So what is the truth in any situation? Maybe that's you talking with someone who is knowledgeable about the situation and they can enlighten you and your anxiety gets better. Or maybe it's you doing finding some truth on your own in research. The second thing we can do to help with our anxiety is not to shut down, but instead to talk with others what you're feeling. Find someone that you trust, someone that you can share your deep feelings with, or someone who's older and wiser than you, and say, hey, I feel this way. Is this normal? That always helps. And then lastly, part of anxiety is that it's unfun and it's scary, so find a way to relax. Find something that can take your mind off of what currently has you so worked up. In counseling, we call that self-care. And that's about maybe watching a favorite funny movie, maybe a conversation with someone you enjoy. Maybe it's playing with a sibling or a pet. Maybe it's sitting out on the back porch, closing your eyes and listening to nature and just forgetting. And just letting your body get back to that normal, calm level.
I think one of the reasons it can be really hard to trust God in all the chaos and confusion of our normal lives, and then right now that's amped up a lot, is sometimes I think we learn to trust God through experience, and when we can look back and see God was faithful here and God was faithful here and God was faithful here, then it's easier for us to trust when something scary comes along. But sometimes we haven't accumulated enough of those experiences, especially as a teenager. And so it's really hard to lean back and find those things where you've seen God was faithful, or maybe you just haven't done that yet. Maybe you haven't taken the time to do that. So one of the things that would be helpful, I think, is to talk with your parents and talk about how God is faithful in the chaos, in the scary, in the hard things. And something to remember in that is sometimes God is faithful, but it doesn't turn out the way we expected. Mm-hmm. So that doesn't mean that God wasn't faithful. It just means it didn't turn out the way we expected. So it's important to talk with your parents and talk to adults that have a little bit more, maybe just years of experience of seeing God's faithfulness, to help you learn to trust Him now. And I think that when you're trusting Him over and over and over again, you eventually accumulate enough of that to where it is easier. But but it's not an easy thing to do, especially I'm not as young as the Orchard students. And I've had many years of walking with God and seeing Him come through over and over and over again, even when it was a time when I was completely devastated. I know that God was in there in that time too. And so I think one of the coolest things I've ever done was make a timeline, kind of like a God timeline of my life. And it might be something that you can do with all your free time, is to make a timeline of your life and the ages that you were and the times where you know that God was with you, or with your family or with a family member where you saw him work, and just see how many places you can see along that timeline of your life, because it's going to be really important for you now in the midst of this confusion and fear, but then also as you grow and get older and have more experiences, you'll always be able to look back at that and see where God was faithful. And I think that that's going to be a good grounding place for a lot of us.
That's really good, that idea of a faith timeline almost. That's so... I've done that before, but I've never thought about doing that in times where I'm feeling anxious or stressed or overwhelmed or just bogged down with worry and fear. Yeah, wow. Okay, so those are some good things that we've talked about anxiety. I hope that you students have a little bit of a better understanding about what anxiety is and what anxiety could look like, and also how to talk to your parents about anxiety, how to voice things that you feel about anxiety. But I have one last question that I want to ask you guys. Can y'all give us some practical things? Y'all both have hit on it, things that I've heard my counselor tell me to help me when I'm feeling anxious, self-care, doing a faith timeline. But what are some other things that we can be doing, maybe some tips that y'all might have to help us manage and cope with anxiety?
So one of the things that you can do, just if you're feeling in the moment of being overwhelmed and maybe your heart is racing or your thoughts are racing, it's actually number one. It's grounding. I'm sorry, I was out of order. Grounding, it just means like coming back to where I am right now. So one of the things that I do is I'll step outside and if you can just take your shoes off and feel the grass under your feet. Close your eyes if you're comfortable. Just breathe in the air, smell the spring air and the pollen and all that's coming in. Listen to the birds and like the airplane traffic or the traffic in the distance. Just all of those things that help you to remember that right here, right now, I am here and I am safe, and just breathe until you feel better. That's usually something that you would do when you're really just, your fear is activated and that anxiety is triggering. Self-care, Melissa mentioned a minute ago, and that self-care looks so different for everybody. So if you're a musician and you like to play music or listen to music, if you're an artist, draw, color. We talked about coloring books, bringing those back. Those were really cool a few years ago.
I have several coloring books that I play with on the regular,
yes.
Especially within the last couple of days. No shame, no shame.
Do a little FaceTime, checking in with your friends, just anything that you can do that makes you feel good and that makes you feel safe. Do you want to speak to any of those others?
Let's see. Number 3 is routine. So during this time of newness and uniqueness, we talked about it, having a schedule every day at home is good. So we're not getting up, you're not going into school bright and early. Now you get to sleep in a little bit, but go ahead, get up, take a shower, eat breakfast, and kind of make like a to-do list. What's my schedule for today? And as you do that, as you get up and your mind knows what to expect, okay, I'm going to get up and get a shower and have breakfast and then do my schoolwork and take a break, you kind of come to expect the routine, and so the anxiousness goes away on its own.
And then reaching out, make sure that you're talking. It can be really easy for especially our older teenagers to kind of quarantine themselves to their room and to just, not have face-to-face conversations right now. And that's just really important. So you've got your parents, most of you at home at this point in time, or your guardians that you can talk to, and your siblings, even though they may not be your favorite person in the world, they're there, they're available. They might be by the end of this. Just making sure that you're reaching out and talking to people, even though it may look a little different right now. Don't like roll in on yourself. Be outward and open and talking to people. And then as we were making this list, Melissa added prayer, which was kind of important. So
So, yeah, so sometimes it's our last resort, but it really should be our first resort. I know that for me, playing my favorite Christian music in the background kind of sets my mind and my heart at ease, and that's when I start talking to God. And I think if we would be more intentional about that, at least at the beginning of your day when you're starting your routine and at the end of your day, it brings a real sense of peace. The Holy Spirit just comes over you, and whatever it is you were worrying about, it's gone.
Wow. Well, thank you guys.
You're welcome.
I hope that y'all will say a special thank you to Molly and Melissa. Go ahead and drop it in the comments and just say thank you. If you have their phone numbers, I give you full permission to text them and say thank you. They deserve a lot of thanks for coming in and sitting with us tonight and sharing their wisdom and their knowledge about something that I think that all of us, adults, students, people my age, people y'all's age, people your age are struggling with. So students, don't go anywhere. We're going to thank Melissa and Molly for being here, and then we have a short video that we want you to watch while they leave the stage.